Welcome to another edition of the Energy Week podcast. Ryan Ray here, as always, with the good doctor, Dr. Ellen Wald. Ms. Wald, how are you doing today?
Everything is fantastic.
The screen, for those who are watching, looks a little different. We have a lot of podcast listeners, but we also live stream this at 1 o'clock Central Time. It looks different because we have on some special guests today who just released a new book, The World for Sale, Money, Power, and the Traitors Who Barter the Earth's Resources, Javier, Blas, and Jack Farchy. I hope I got that right. I tried in the pre-op. So, as I said, I am a redneck. All the listeners know that, but you gentlemen hopefully will give me a little leeway. It's wonderful to have you on. Let's get into the book. We have limited time here. First off, I always like to know, when I read a book, what is the inspiration? What made you want to write this particular book?
Well, the real inspiration was that we both were covering we are both reporters with the Financial Times and now with Bloomberg News. And when we started covering the industry, we always thought the commodity traders are very important for the global economy. Very few people know much about them. And we were always thinking, God, it would be very nice to have a book where you could read everything that you really need to know about them, a bit of the history and why, how they make their money, who they are, et cetera, et cetera. And over the years, I was particularly complaining about why there is not a book, And, I think that after 20 years covering the industry, I decided that actually, we better write the book ourselves. So that was the inspiration. I mean, the real inspiration beyond that is to tell the story of how a few commodity trading houses who are on the business of moving physically the natural resources that we use for our modern life made money and became also very influential in shaping the world. It's not that they're important for markets and businesses, they're also important for global politics.
Yeah. Go ahead, Ellen.
Yeah, that's really, really interesting. And I've really enjoyed reading this book and I've learned so much, both from a historian's perspective, but also about the current state of affairs. And one of the things, though, that I've really, really loved about as I've been reading the book is the anecdotes that you start. I mean, right off the bat, there's like an incredibly exciting anecdote about this flight going into Libya and this terrorists and so. But one of my absolute favorite anecdotes is actually a scene from post World War II Russia, where you have this guy who's going into the Soviet Union, and he stays at a hotel, and they describe the streets of Russia or the streets of Moscow as kind of empty, and he's trying to make these connections to perhaps export some commodities from there, and it felt like a scene right out of the TV show The Americans when they show scenes in Russia, and so I was wondering if you had any trouble picking which anecdotes to put in and which to take out, and is there any one anecdote that didn't make the cut in the book that you could share with us?
Jack, where are you going to start?
Yes, is the short answer. We had lots of trouble picking which anecdotes and which stories to leave in and to cut out, and that was probably the source of our largest fights in the process of working on the book was the need to cut things out and the need to keep it to a reasonable length that people would want to read. I think probably we could have written the book 2 or 3 times longer and still had material left over. In terms of anecdotes that we cut out, Javier, have you got anything on top?
Well, I mean, it was not completely cut out, but we have to tighten things. I mean, one of my favorite ones, maybe because when I think about commodities, one of the things that comes to mind is always agriculture, because it's something that we all need. We eat and we know about our food. To me, this is a story about how American grain traders sold a third of the wheat crop of the United States in the early 70s to the Soviet Union, and how, in a way, the Soviet negotiator, which was in New York, in Manhattan, was playing off each of the American commodity traders, one against each other. And all of them thought that they were the only one in town that had the business, but actually he was talking to 5 different companies. And all of this was happening in the early 70s at the height of the Cold War. And to think that a bunch of American companies, without telling anything to the American government, would be in negotiations with a Soviet commercial envoy in Manhattan, deciding a deal that ultimately was $1 billion worth. I mean, $1 billion in 1972. To me, that's mesmerizing, and in a way, it reflects what the commodity traders are. I mean, like, they are these big business power brokers, but they are also big political power brokers. I mean, the reason that the Soviet Union didn't go hungry that year was because of that particular commodity trade.
That's so interesting, and that was definitely one of the anecdotes that I really enjoyed reading about as well. One of the other things that is interesting about the description of these commodity traders is when you were discussing how these traders broker deals for South Africa in apartheid South Africa, to help get oil to South Africa when so many countries were refusing to sell to them, and there was a blockade. And you write, I think it's on page 88, you write, it was an era before satellites were tracking every ship on the water, and traders could easily hide their maneuvers. And so my question is really, how has technology helped change the commodity trading business? And also, how has it perhaps made their profit seeking even more challenging?
Well, I mean, today you will not be able to do what the traders were doing in the 80s with South Africa, because there will be a bunch of satellites and tanker trackers who will be looking at satellite pictures of the harbors in South Africa to see the tankers arriving, and then try to backtrack exactly where they were coming from. I mean, sometimes when we are covering now Iranian and Venezuelan shipments and how they try to disguise what's going on, I cannot think about those maneuvers of the 80s, but today is a lot more difficult for the traders to do that, and simply they will not do it because they know that the American government is watching, and if you do something that breaks the sanctions, they're going to know and they're going to get out. In the 80s, it was possible because no one will just ever know that it was happening. Because technology was not there. I mean, like, this is the era where it's pre-internet, pre-email, where the fastest mean of sending a message probably was a telex.
So I interviewed Gregory Zuckerman on his book, the Frackers, and it was kind of weird for me because I worked for Chesapeake as a vendor, and I was a part of a lot of that, not in any relevant way to be part of the book, but I was just there. And one of the things he said was that, I think it was Harold Ham or some of the guys had gotten mad about things that they said. I thought he did a really good job of being fair and balanced and telling a good story. Have you guys gotten any kind of feedback like, hey, you really didn't give us a fair shake here? Because that's always interesting when you talk to authors, because even when you feel like they've done a good job representing them, the folks in the story might not feel like they got a fair shake.
I mean, so far, I think that the reaction has been, reasonably good from the industry. I mean, is everyone happy with the book? I don't think so. As we quoted at the beginning of the book, there were people in the industry, when we approached them to talk, what they told us was, well, we'll rather prefer that you don't write this book. That was the comment of the late CEO and chairman of Vitol, which is the world's largest oil trading house. And he maybe was joking, but I think that I think that he was quite serious about it. People have said, look, you have a job to do, and in general, the reviews have been that the book is fair to the industry. It's just an industry that is needed, and it does a very good job of moving the commodities from production areas to consumption areas. But it's also an industry that over the years have had shadows.
What was the most interesting place you went to do an interview, or the most interesting interview you did?
Well, I'm going to tell you that the split of where we were doing the interviews was not fair, because Jack went to Jamaica to do some of the reporting in the Caribbean, and I ended in the Democratic Republic of Congo in Central Africa. So I think that Jack has some fantastic interviews in Jamaica, actually.
Yeah, I interviewed the guy who was the mining minister and energy minister in the 1980s. And it was kind of fascinating because, we're both journalists covering commodity markets, commodities industry. We spend a lot of our time in our day jobs talking to commodity traders, CEOs of companies, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But to talk to this chap, Hugh Hart, who was one of the senior ministers of the Jamaican government in the 1980s, and to hear him explain quite how desperate Jamaica's economic predicament was and how essential the commodity traders, in particular, in this instance, Mark Rich and co, were to the country's survival, was quite something. I mean, he told me this story of on a Friday evening, one night, somebody from the central bank came to see him and said, "Really sorry, but we've run out of money." And he said, "What do you mean we've run out of money?" He said, "We've run out of money. They need a guarantee from the central bank to buy the cargo of oil that they buy each month, and the central bank can't issue the guarantee because it's run out of money." And the only person he could think of to call was Mark Rich. He called Mark Rich, and within 24 hours, Mark Rich had found a way of getting some oil to Jamaica. And that was a fascinating experience to see it from the other side, and to see both how how important a position the commodity traders were in, and how they could make a lot of money out of that, but also how they were essential to, in this case, the economic survival of a whole country.
Yeah, that was one of the points, I think, that overall that you bring up again and again in the book, was how these people essentially created, I guess, almost liquidity in a market that didn't really have a whole lot of it, because it relied on transporting actual things. And so it seems like they really provided a lot of liquidity, and also perhaps made the market more efficient in ways. And you could argue with that, and I wonder though, but at the same time, you bring up a lot of the things that these people did that were clearly, supporting terrible dictators, furthering the very oppressive regimes, clearly doing things that were barely legal, sometimes definitely illegal. Is there an argument that that commodities traders in this scale are better for society? Have they added to the market, or I kind of wonder where do we think, or is this just a gray area?
I think generally they are good for society in the sense that they play a very important economic role that is needed. At the end of the day, when every morning I have my coffee, I put the capsule of the machine, and I don't think much about it, other than now that we are much working from home, I do realize how more coffee I'm drinking. So I need someone to provide that coffee for me, and that's going to be a commodity trader who is going to go to Colombia and pick up the beans and do all the supply chain. That means that when Javier wakes up in West London in the morning, gets his coffee. But with that, it's a business that opens for certain behaviors that over the years and decades have allowed traders to do, as you were mentioning, things that probably are as you put it, maybe unethical, and in some cases completely illegal. It's a mix of, you have big money and relatively weak governments and a completely unregulated sector. I mean, there is no regulation on physical trading. Everything is basically, you could do as much as you want with very, very little oversight by anyone. It has allowed for the less scrupulous members of the industry to do things that they are illegal. And unfortunately, that continues. We have seen some of the traders are today under investigation by the U.S. Department of Justice for corruption. And as recently as December, the world's largest oil trader settled charges in the United States and pay a big fine. I think it was $160 million, and admitted that had paid bribes in Latin America as recently as July last year. So we think that some of this was in the 80s and maybe 90s. Some of the bad behaviors were happening about yesterday.
One of the other things that you mentioned is that in addition to having the commodities trade, the commodity trading firms, trading in oil, and some of the interesting things that they did, I thought it was very interesting how they they claimed they were selling certain grades of oil to people, and then really they just kind of reassembled it from other cheaper grades to try to make it look like that was what they were selling. But one of the interesting things you mentioned is that oil companies developed their own trading units, like Shell, and I think Shell and BP, or is it Chevron and BP, and how they were much less risky than the actual commodity trading firms, but they still do this. And you mentioned also in the conclusion that the Abu Dhabi oil company and Aramco are developing, and now I know Aramco has a trading arm. And so I wonder how much, especially as these national oil companies develop their trading arms, how does that open the possibility? Essentially, I mean, there's no such thing as insider trading when it comes to commodities, but if Aramco can have a link to what's happening in the OPEC meeting room, what is that? Is that going to give them a leg up? I mean, where do you see this kind of maybe developing here?
I think anyone who has a link to the inside of the OPEC meeting room probably has a leg up in trading the oil market, for sure.
We are beginning to see, you are absolutely right. There is a big trend now where many companies that previously didn't have a trading operation have realized the riches of trading. They see the profits that can be made in trading, in part because when Glencore became a public company and started publishing his financial results, everyone saw how much money trading was providing. And I think that the likes of national oil companies like Aramco or ADNOC, or certainly the Chinese, have said, well, why we should just leave money on the table when we can make that money? And they have been expanding on those areas. So far, the results are a bit mixed. It's not very clear whether, on one hand, the national oil companies have that kind of risk appetite that the traders have. To make money, you have to be ready to lose some money. And perhaps the national oil companies are not as ready as the traders to be able to sometimes lose money. And then the other question is, traders, the individuals themselves make a ton of money. I mean, salaries of 2, 3, 5, bonuses of 2, 3, 5, 10 and more $1 million a year are normal. And for some companies, to pay the traders more than the CEO of the company, it's a taboo. I mean, it's just not going to happen. And if you are not willing to pay that kind of money, you are not going to be able to recruit the best of the best. So it's a cultural thing, and I think that they it's going to take a bit of time. Probably they will get there, but it's just going to take them a bit of time.
Okay. I have one more question before we turn it over to I want to ask some questions. I want Ryan to be able to ask something about China maybe, but I wanted to know, so which of you had to go to Krasnoyarsk in Siberia, or did you nix that from the list of places to go?
Neither of us went to Krasnoyarsk, but I have been to several aluminium smelters in Siberia, not so far from Krasnoyarsk.
Okay, so we'll start with this is for both of you guys. Start with Jack, then go to Javier. You mentioned going to different places, interviewing different people. We've talked about kind of this sketchiness and this the kind of murkiness that we get into. How do the traders view themselves? So we all agree on this podcast that we need them. They play an important role. But how are they justifying their actions, or are they kind of like, no, it's shady, but we got to do what we got to do? What's kind of the morality that you guys experience when you talk to these guys from their perspective, regardless of what we think?
I think that one explanation that they give to us was, well, if you want to do business in certain countries, you really need to follow the normal practices of that country, and if you want to do business there, commissions and money is going to have to change hands. It's the way that you do business in that particular country. Obviously, that begs the question, well, but you can decide not to do business in that particular country. I mean, it's your decision to go there. But that is usually the answer that they give. And then maybe Jack wants to expand. And in politics, they always say, we don't play politics, we are here on business. But clearly their actions have a political impact.
Yeah, I mean, I think you see it in the way they've justified their actions throughout history, going back to Mark Rich. Is they say we follow the law and we try to make money, and if what we're doing is legal and it makes money, we do it, and if it doesn't make money or it's not legal, we don't do it. And as we've been discussing already, there are certainly examples where they've done things that aren't legal, some commodity traders, but for the most part, a lot of the stories we're talking about are not things of people breaking the law. It's maybe doing things that you might consider to be unethical or undesirable, or playing politics and supporting a government that you or I might not like, or whatever it might be. But the justification is, we're not here to to be moral arbiters of global politics. We're here to make money. And somebody else sets the laws, not us. And if we're trading within the laws, then that's as far as we consider it. I think that's beginning to change now. It's I think in today's environment, particularly if you're based in Switzerland or London or the US, it's harder and harder to sit back and say we don't care about being seen as a good citizen. We just follow the law. I don't think that argument really washes quite so well now as maybe it did even 5 or 10 years ago. But certainly that is the stance that a lot of companies have taken until very recently, or even still today.
And some of them, they do play a bit of a double standard. I mean, Marrich famously said that he was against apartheid in South Africa, and at the same time, almost on the same breath of the sentence, he will say, but we will continue supplying oil to South Africa apartheid. Because he said we are not breaking the law, and he was technically right. The embargo was a voluntary embargo. It's just that a question that, for any tasteful person thought that what South Africa at that point was doing was wrong. It's just that he said, well, it's legal, so we're going to do it. But personally, he will say, I am against apartheid South Africa. I'm against the apartheid. I was like, well, you are saying one thing, but doing the opposite.
Yeah, Ellen mentioned China. So China seems to kind of do what they're going to do, right? So they're going to do a deal with Iran or North Korea or Venezuela. And I know when I was there in 2019 that they had certain trading things that they were looking at doing and getting to it. Are these corporations, are they worried about China maybe taking a predominant role, trying to move into the space because they'll make the law to fit their needs? And to your point about paying the traders, well, they just won't pay them. So are they worried about a disproportional influence coming out of China in the trading market?
They are. We are beginning to see examples in oil, food, and on metals. And we quote on our book some CEOs of Western trading houses saying that the Chinese are willing to take an amount of risk that the Western commodity traders cannot anymore. And they're willing to operate in countries where the Western traders cannot operate anymore. If you are a Western trader, it doesn't matter whether you are based in the United States. As long as you transact in dollars, you are within the reach of the U.S. Department of Justice and the U.S. Treasury. So you will not go and trade with Iran because you know that sanctions are going to be applied to you. But if you are a Chinese, some of the Chinese traders don't really operate on the dollar. They operate on yuan. They do barter, so they can go there. That they are the only traders left that they are doing the Iranian oil, for example.
Okay. Final question for me. I learned, and then Ellen, if she has one, but I learned this from an author a while back. They were talking about just the labor of love. And so I've kind of learned that when I talk to authors, I always like to give them a chance to say, how hard it was, or let us all appreciate what went into this book. So here's your chance to kind of take a victory lap, if you will, to tell the world, the labor of love that went through this process. Because when you talk to authors, at least off the record, they're always like, oh my God, I was going to pull my hair out and I finally made it. And so any stories or anything you want to kind of just maybe behind the scenes you want to get out there, because I know a book like this takes a tremendous amount of work. And so I always like to allow the authors a chance to bask in the glory, if you will.
I'm gonna let Jack answer that. I think that we did one thing. We spent a period of 3 months together writing in the countryside, and we will almost every early evening we'll take a walk that will involve a big hill. Or I thought at the very beginning it was a big hill. Jack claims there was a small hill, but we'll go uphill every early evening, and then we will discuss the book. So I think that Jack, every time that he wanted to change something, he will start the conversation with, he saw that I was really struggling walking up, and I would say, okay, fine, we're gonna do it your way. Don't worry, take it. Because I couldn't take it anymore. But that was part of the difficult process of writing the book. But Jack, go.
Yeah, you've seen straight through me, Javier. My tactic has been rumbled. No, I mean, I would say that this book has been in the works for both of us probably for 10 or 20 years even. It's been something that we've been fascinated by and have been thinking about and working on, even if not, understanding that we were working towards a book necessarily, but learning about the commodity traders and wanting to try and understand them better and to report properly on them and to get them to speak to us has been a project, of decades in the making for both of us.
Okay. Well, it sounds just as an unbiased party, it sounds like Jack got a lot of the better ends of this deal here. Went to the Caribbean. He made you walk up the hill. Like it sounds like he got a lot of the better end of the deal of this book sometimes. I'm just saying. I'm just saying this as an unbiased person. Maybe it's Javier's skewing this. I don't know.
No, you are
Maybe
absolutely
it's
right.
nicer. I don't explain all of the moans that I have about Javier.
Ellen, any final? I'll give you the last word.
I was you actually got it at the question I was going to ask. I'm going to ask something separate, which is tell us a little bit about the covers of the books. Which one do you like better? Is there anything of particular significance about them that readers should know? I'll hold this one up. This is the American cover.
Oh, well, I can probably show you a bit closer the UK cover, which looks like that. There you go. Javier's got it too. No, I mean, it's possibly it's a bit unusual to have two different covers, but it's a function of us having two different publishers, one in the US and one in the UK. And I mean, it's the concept of the book. You know, it's a book about commodity traders, and they play a really important role in global politics, and the economy is not necessarily the easiest one to illustrate. So I guess that shows you why you've got two different covers, one with a globe made out of money in the UK version, and then another one with a globe made out of lots of different commodities in the other.
And the book is The World for Sale, Money, Power, and the Traders Who Barter Their Earth's Resources. Javier and Jack, thank you guys so much for coming on. Hope everyone goes out and reads the book. We'll also link to y'all's Twitter profiles in the show notes so people can go check you out there, because you guys are putting out regular content on the Twitter sphere as always. So thank you so much for coming on today.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
All right, Miss Wald. Well, let's get into the rest of the story, as we like to say around here. Okay, let's talk about, I don't know, did you see the news about the Saudis last week? I don't know if you caught that or not.
What news about the Saudis? Huh? Was something going on last week? Was there like an OPEC meeting? Did I miss an OPEC meeting?
You missed the monthly OPEC meeting, which I think I said a long time ago that this will be used to kind of manipulate the markets maybe more than some thought. I was wrong. I've been wrong about every way that they will manipulate it. I've been wrong about that, but they have manipulated it in ways that maybe have caught people by surprise.
Yeah, this seemed like, I mean, everyone seemed to say, hey, it's a surefire, you know, they're going to increase production probably 500,000 barrels a day, and the Saudis are going to bring back that 1 million barrels a day, and they're going to chill out the market. What do they call cool down? Sorry, the market's going to cool down. Was the cool down to the market. And what did we get? I think we got fire. We got, what is it? You don't throw fire on fire.
We got grease on fire.
Grease, yeah, I don't know. They added added gas.
Also, we should know these.
You'd think we'd be better with these metaphors.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, it's gas on a fire, gas on a burning fire.
Yeah.
That's the thing.
Yeah, and then Iran or the Houthis in Yemen, whoever you want to blame for it, had a rather ineffective attack, I would say, on some Saudi oil installations. I think they blew up some holding tank, and that was it, and nothing stopped, and people were rightly concerned, I think.
Can we talk about the Houthis for half a second here? I hadn't read these reports. I've seen the headlines. I hadn't read the reports. These originated out of Yemen, right? Not the Houthis, but these missiles, correct?
Yeah, they believe, or I think they were drones. The
drones, right? But they took off from Yemen.
14 drones, 8 ballistic missiles. There you go.
Yeah, thank you. So I have been a very big proponent of the U.S. not selling the Saudis weapons so they would stop bombing the folks in Yemen. Folks in Yemen, you can't start bombing the Saudis now. Okay, we've got Biden to quit selling the weapons. You can't, because we'll start selling it back. Like, this is like, what's wrong with you people? Just stop for half a second. I'm not saying that the Saudis are good or great or have done a good thing. I'm not saying any of that. But I am saying you got a big victory with Biden stopping the sale on some level of weapons to the Saudis. And it feels like since then the folks, the Houthis in Yemen, are like, oh, okay, well, here we go now. Now it's go time. It's like, okay, this is not.
Yep. So. Well, it did, on the other hand, spike the price of Brent up to, like, what was it? 70, I think. Yeah, a little above 70. 71.38 it surged to, which was the highest since January 8th, 2020. And then, of course, it slipped, and now it's back to like 68 63 was. But I think it just highlights the fact that when things in the oil market seem tighter, geopolitical stuff matters more, I guess. Although I think it was pretty clear that there was really no damage, and so it just went back down, which is interesting because remember way back to like January 2020 when there was when Qasem Soleimani was killed, and everyone was like, the risk premium. Remember, there was like, is it baked in? Is it baked into prices? And like, everyone's like, well, it's already baked in, so that's why prices aren't doing. So okay, so what, like, is the risk premium baked in now? Is it not? Are we thinking there's going to be more? Is this emboldened? Are there going to be more attacks? I mean, should oil be higher because there's clearly a geopolitical risk or not?
I can tell you, this is a piece from January 10th, 2020. In the past 10 days, the United States and Iran have made Iraq the focus of the world. After both struck targets in Iraq, in response, crude oil prices moved up briefly, then returned to previous levels. The rise and fall of oil prices demonstrated that crude oil remained more resilient than other goods. In the meantime, analysts said there's no need to panic. There's no panic in the sector, but there's an increasing vigilance of the possibility of supply disruption. And it goes on to talk about the price, how it went up. Because you remember, this is a few months after the Saudi attack, the attack on the Saudi refinery in like October, September.
Right. I meant to look this up before we got on the show. Do you remember how much did it spike during that attack?
I think I have it. So I wrote this piece. That's why I know it's out there. And the piece was kind of, it's for Xinhua, the Chinese paper. And the piece was kind of like, yeah, okay, the price went up, but so what? And so let's see here. Plentiful. I thought maybe I did 2 or 3 pieces for him, so maybe it was a different one. But yeah, just to go show you that there was at least some out there that were saying that in 2020 it wasn't a big deal. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So let's
remember how much.
But anyways, yeah. Yes, to your point, which is we have Soleimani killed, we have bombs going off in Baghdad and Iraqi bases, and they're not hitting anybody, and so the price kind of course. All that's distant memory because the price just died. So yeah, that's all distant memory. Did you see Big Orange tweet last week? I got to poke on him a little bit. He actually had a good tweet for once. It was good.
The one about criticizing our clothing choices, or the one about the oil market.
Yes, he called me Tom Hanks, so I can't complain.
That's true. That's true.
And you're Meg Ryan, even though I don't think I'm looking like Tom, but I'm not gonna argue with it. Like maybe Tom on Castaway a few months in. So but whatever. No, he said that he's not sure what was more strange, seeing the price go negative last year or the price increase after the record storage last Wednesday. And I think this, we're why is the market responding the way that it is? And and you look at some of the China numbers, there's more concern that China's economy is not really back to where it's supposed to be, maybe. And so I still wonder, how much do you think the Saudis are really thinking, hey, this thing is overinflated and demand's really not going to come back that quickly? Do you think that they want the price, that they're not afraid the crackers?
It's interesting because if you listen to what Ahmed Nasser, CEO of Aramco, said at CERAWeek last week, he if you contrast what he said with what the guys ahead of ADNOC said. So head of ADNOC said, we think demand will be fully recovered to pre-pandemic levels by like the end of this year, in 2021. Mm-hmm. And Nasser said, we don't think demand is going to recover until sometime in 2022. And so I think that gives you a sense of where the Saudis are coming from, and that they really don't think demand is as strong as maybe it looks based on the market right now. And there are some interesting things about that. So I was looking at it, what's going on in China, and that's obviously I think where Aramco is looking a lot too, because that's where they make most of their oil sales. And I'm just looking for this article that I used in a piece that I wrote. I had to do with okay. So what's going on with China? So first of all, what's going on in India? India specifically, they're like, OPEC, please increase your oil production. We want to buy more oil. And the Saudi oil minister's message to India was, we still do a lot of cheap oil earlier in the year that you put in storage, so just use that. which is an interesting response. But so China, okay, so let's look at what China's saying. So China's oil purchases for February and March seem to be noticeably reduced. Why? So that seems to be the big question. So I've seen I've seen people say these are the reasons. There's a combination of higher prices. They're not buying as much because of higher prices, or they're not buying as much because they're doing refinery maintenance right now. So they don't want to buy as much because they got to take their refineries offline and they have abundant stockpiles. And I've even seen some indicate that, I think we talked about this last week, that they don't have any more storage. So
we have someone coming on. I got to finalize the date to talk about the China SPR. So stay tuned for that. So.
Exactly.
Yes.
But so this is here's the question. So which of these are they going to stop buying just because it's more expensive and they're not making the kind of margins that they were looking for, or is there really some kind of slowdown? I mean, like what's going on there? Is this just a temporary thing? And so the sellers like, well, we know they're not really buying that much, so we're going to keep prices low, and maybe next month we'll get going. I don't know, but I'm not surprised if they're making a decision based on what they see coming out of China as opposed to other places.
Yeah, I agree. But I do wonder when they said drill baby drill is not coming back. You look at Vicky Hollop's comments last week talking about not getting back to previous levels of production. So it could be that they just, even if things ramp up in the U.S., they just fundamentally believe that the ramp up just won't be back to previous levels, and so you might see this groundswell of drilling rigs go out there, but the production just doesn't get back to a certain point, and so they feel the risk is really mitigated.
And maybe that is but if they're actually planning on managing this on a month by month basis, then what they're really saying is the risk for April is mitigated, right? They're they're saying we don't think that we think that we're not going to see more production in April, but I know they keep saying this, like we're not doing this, we're not doing that, and I think ABS said, he's like, the shale companies, they finally realized that they have to, they finally realized they're putting their shareholders first, right? They have had their fair share of advantage, and now they're listening to the call of their shareholders. Okay, but are they really? Is that what their shareholders really want? Are the shareholders really looking for profit? They're like, okay, now that WTI is at 65, show us the profits, or do they want to see growth? And I think that's everyone's saying that, but is that really what's going on? Is there potential to drill more wells? Do they even need to drill more wells to increase production? Like how much can production increase without actually drilling new wells? And how long does it take to ramp up? I mean, we're back. We were down to 10. We're back at 11. Do we have to get to 13 for people to say it's back to drill baby drill? Can we get to 12?
Yeah, and I think that's what we're getting the same thing here. Is like, what does drill baby drill mean? Because when Sarah Palin said it years ago, it didn't mean what it was by 2016. Well, I'm trying to think. Was she in 2012 election or 2016 election? Maybe I got my.
I think she was the 2008 election. She was the John McCain, right? She was the John McCain against Barack Obama. I mean 8
or 12. I'm 16.
Yeah, but she was always saying drill baby drill. Like
that was kind of her. So 2008, I'm saying when she said in 2008, that did not the connotation and how much we were drilling by 2016 or 20. It's completely different. And so even so, the moniker has kind of changed how much drilling that actually means. And so do you get back to 12, 13? The price would seem, if you trust the experts, the price would have to be at a pretty substantial point to get back to that. But if it does get back to 13, well, then the Saudis shot themselves in the foot, right?
Well, maybe they made a lot of money in the interim, and they're like,
Did you see the headline? I haven't got to dig into this. So I don't know. Did you see the headline that the Biden administration might be reconsidering its position on Venezuela?
No, I did not. I'm not surprised on that. But hey, well, there you go. They reconsider their position on Venezuela. They reconsider how fast are they going to bring is diplomacy with Iran going to advance? Perhaps those 2 million barrels that are missing, I guess, from the market. Are they coming? Could they come? Could Iran put them back on the market sooner than U.S. shale could?
Well, so I don't know how viable the Venezuela thing is. So I saw the headline. I didn't get a chance to dig in. It was last night, but But if there was a reposturing of U.S. policy towards Venezuela, and Venezuela was able to start getting oil production back on the market from what 500,000 barrels a day is what it's at now, something like that, 600,000 barrels a day. I mean, they were doing what 2.5 million a few years ago.
Yeah.
And I don't know where they can go back to. I know there's a lot of problems involved, but if Venezuela starts trying to, there's those are the kind of things that interest me, because it's like you see, you have these 2 million missing Iranian barrels. If Venezuela could get back some production, so I don't know. See, I did think the other thing from OPEC was it seemed like most of the OPEC members came out pretty early on and like, hey, no, like Nigeria and all these other countries, like, no, don't increase production. And I found that interesting because like Nigeria has a break even of like 130 to 140. So yeah, they're like, yeah, don't increase, let the price go.
Yeah.
Like a little bit of a interest there.
And that was so interesting because the little countries were all like, no increase.
Yeah. And the Russians got what, 75,000 barrel day increase?
Yeah, they got more, but they claim it's for domestic use. Ha ha ha.
But I mean, like, how pissed are they?
But it's so easy because now Russia's got everything they want. Every time they ask for, we'll go along with your rollover, but we want to increase by 100,000 barrels a day, and everybody's like, sure, go for it. It's like Russia's gonna be so happy.
You think so?
They get everything they want every time they want to increase production, and the rest of OPEC doesn't. They get it.
You don't think that they're afraid about the so they're not afraid of the U.S. increasing production either to drill prices back down then? You see what I'm saying?
Well, they are. We know that Novak said that, actually.
Right.
Novak said that. I think they are, but they're like, fine, you sissies. You don't want to increase production? Fine, but we're going to. Like, they keep getting permission to increase a little bit. They get a permission every month to increase a little bit. That adds up to a lot bit.
There you go.
I want to say thank you to our friend who's wishing me happy International Women's Day. It's very sweet. Thank you.
Happy internet. I did not know. So there we go.
Apparently International Women's Day is a thing. Also, apparently the color for it is purple, which also I didn't know. So I'm not.
A mix of the red states and the blue states. Purple.
Oh yeah, there we go.
I have no idea.
Purple. I don't know. Purple happens to be my favorite color. So.
There you go. It's standard to you. Let's see here.
No. So what do we think? Here we got a comment. Russia has.
Go ahead, read the comment. Go ahead.
Oh, he says Russia has to play it safe because there's the Navalny issue. Yeah, they got him back. He's like in Siberia now.
But did you hear about Amnesty International revoked his status?
Who paid off Amnesty International?
Either paid him off or there's a horse head. I'm not sure. But
that's terrible. I mean,
yeah, they revoked his status as a prisoner of conscience or whatever they call it. Wrong. Let's see here. I can pull it up. I have it. Yeah, it was last week. It didn't really make a whole lot of headlines.
No.
And it's kind of funny because, let's see here. Yeah, so I've The Persuasion is who I was reading, talking about it. But let's see here. At first, it seemed like a bad joke. Amnesty International has stripped Navalny of his status as a prisoner of conscience. The report came more real when some name I can't pronounce, head of Kremlin's international propaganda channel, RT, put out a triumphant tweet. Let's see the tweet here. Is it in English? No, it's all in Russian.
All in Russian.
Yeah, acknowledging that one of her puppet freelancers living in New York had been instrumental in convincing Amnesty that Navalny is a, quote, Nazi. The post ended with congratulations to everyone in uniform on the occasion of Russian Defenders of the Fatherland Day. I thought it was the motherland. Is it the fatherland now? Okay, whatever. Her tweet might as well read, great job. Congratulations on success of your mission. Perfect timing.
Germany I thought was the fatherland. And Russia is the motherland.
That's maybe that's a joke. I don't know, because I thought Russia was the motherland too, but it says fatherland. It says fatherland. So,
I can't remember what I was going to say, but I just think that Russia has. You're right. I remember Novak saying like, "Well, we have to be concerned about these shale players." So imagine you're going to the media and it's like, "No, we don't want to. We want to roll over. We want to roll over." And we're just like, "Well, we think we should increase." And everyone's like, "Okay, you do that." I mean, Russia really can't complain. Maybe they all think Iranian oil is going to come back before U.S. oil. Or what about Canadian oil? What about Western Canadian Select? I mean, I get like Canada's got issues getting it out of Canada, but like if WTI is up, I mean, I don't know what the differential is with Western Canadian Select, but I think that it's been doing better.
Yeah.
So
I don't know. It doesn't make sense to me.
what about Brazil? I mean, there are other places that produce oil other than the United States, Russia, and Saudi Arabia. What about and other OPEC plus countries? What about Brazil? What about the North Sea? I mean,
it's. I mean,
there is more oil out there in the world. Is the oil market really as tight as we think it is?
Well, Big Orange seems to think it's not.
I think there's a good argument for that. I think that people think it's tight now. It may be tight right now. Will it continue to be tight? I'm skeptical. People are saying, $80 oil by, and then by June. I don't know, maybe, or maybe it'll hit 80 and that's as high as it'll go and it'll be back down. I don't know, obviously, and I don't like to make predictions, but I just think that it's always good to be skeptical of the prevailing narrative.
Yeah, I mean, I think those are separate things, right? So how high might it go versus is one thing. That's so oil tops at 75 or 80. Okay, that's possible. How long will it stay there is a fundamentally different question.
Yeah.
And
that's
so
a good point.
And so it could surge up to 75, 80 or something like that, but then not last there very long. Or it could last for 40 years. Who knows? But
Saudi Arabia could adopt I call it the Othman idea, because this guy that I interviewed for my book, Othman al-Khwaider, was very, very adamant that Saudi Arabia's policy of just all-out production was really, really wrong, because he's like, they have the advantage because they've got this oil and it is always going to be useful. And why are they spending it? Why are they selling it for so little money now? They should just cut, and they'll make so much more money in the longer term when they sell it when prices are higher. And it almost seems like they're adopting this philosophy at the moment, which is hold back. I mean, how long are they going to hold that extra million barrels a day off the market? I mean, we know Saudi Arabia can produce up to 12. So that's a lot of spare capacity. I think they're at like 8-ish, a little over 8 now. I mean, that's a lot of spare capacity they're holding back from the market. And, we always have to keep in mind that they're holding that back.
Okay. Well, Miss Wald, we will have to pick it up next week. Where will you be in the meantime?
In the meantime, well, let's see. Later today at 4:30, I'm going to be on TD Ameritrade Network, talking about oil at market close and all of these interesting things that we touched on a bit now. And then I will be on investing.com later in the week and on the Warm newsletter and hot take of the day.
Okay. All right, everyone. We'll be back next week.